A child's tiny sandal lies buried in the dust of a 3,000-year-old house. This single object holds more than just history, it holds a story. Archaeology now lets us walk through the front doors of ancient homes to uncover the daily lives of families. You will gain the ability to see these long-lost people not as statues or names, but as complex individuals with joys and struggles, much like our own. How did a Roman father show affection for his children? What secrets does a cooking pot from the Indus Valley reveal about a mother's day? By the end of this journey, the silent stones of the past will speak with a familiar human voice. What part of your own family life do you think would survive for millennia? That tiny sandal belonged to a child who was part of a world nothing like our own. Step inside a bustling Roman domus, a home that was far more than a simple building. This was a complex social universe ruled by the paterfamilias, the male head of the household, whose authority extended over everyone within its walls. But his power was just one thread in a rich tapestry. The daily life of this home was woven together by many hands, from the matron managing the household accounts to the children playing in the courtyard, and the enslaved individuals whose labor made it all function. The ancient idea of family was expansive, stretching beyond parents and children to include grandparents, cousins, clients, and even the spiritual presence of ancestors honored at a small household shrine. So how do we begin to map these intricate relationships from mere fragments? Archaeologists look to the very bones of these structures. The layout of a house speaks volumes. A single, large common room suggests a life lived collectively, while a series of smaller, private rooms might hint at social hierarchies and the separation of family members from their servants. A grand entrance leading to a central courtyard speaks of a desire to impress visitors, while a secluded wing could indicate the private quarters for women and children. These architectural choices are silent testimonies to the social rules that govern daily life. Beyond the walls, burial inscriptions offer poignant details, naming freed slaves who became part of the extended family, or celebrating a matron for her piety and management of the estate. Even legal tablets found in the ashes of Vesuvius detail inheritances and guardianships, outlining the obligations that bound people together. By piecing together this evidence from housing, text, and tomb, we move beyond the modern nuclear family ideal. We start to see the ancient household for what it truly was, a fluid and varied institution central to the economy, religion, and social identity of its members. This foundational understanding of who lived under one roof is what allows us to finally hear the echoes of their most personal moments. The very floor plan of an ancient house is a frozen record of daily life. Archaeologists can walk through these silent ruins and read the social rules embedded in the walls. In Mesopotamia, a courtyard house was designed with a single entrance leading into a central open space. This was not just an architectural style, it was a deliberate choice for security and family cohesion. The courtyard was the bustling center of activity, but the rooms surrounding it were often accessed only through this central area, controlling movement and visibility. This layout tells a story of a family unit that valued its privacy from the outside world while living in a tightly knit community within. Now travel to a Roman insula, a multi-story apartment building teeming with life. The ground floor shops opened directly onto noisy streets, while the smaller, darker apartments on the upper floors were reached by narrow staircases. This vertical separation speaks volumes about social class and family life. A wealthy merchant's family might live above their business, their world distinct from the laborers renting single rooms at the very top. The architecture itself enforced a social hierarchy. To understand any of these homes, you must first find its heart. Across countless cultures, this was the hearth. More than just a source of fire for cooking, the hearth was a sacred symbol of the family. Its location was never accidental. Placed in a central room, it pulled everyone together for warmth, meals, and storytelling. The soot patterns on the ceiling and the cooking pots found nearby allow archaeologists to pinpoint this vital center. The wear on the floor around it tells of countless gatherings. Then there are the spaces that reveal deeper social structures. In a wealthier Greek home, you might identify a room set apart as the gynaeceum, the women's quarters. Its position, often on an upper floor or at the back of the house, and its limited access points physically manifest the idea of seclusion. By mapping how one moved from the public reception rooms for men to these private family areas, we can trace the invisible boundaries that govern the lives of women and children. Every doorway and corridor forms a map of relationships, a spatial narrative of who could go where and when. This careful analysis of walls and walkways provides the essential foundation, the physical stage upon which the intimate drama of the family was performed. But the true texture of daily life is not found in the floor plans, but in the dust that settled upon them. Archaeologists sift through this dust to recover the household assemblage, the collective scatter of broken pottery, lost tools, and discarded trinkets that a family left behind. Each fragment is a silent word in a forgotten story. A smooth, heavy loom weight found in a corner speaks of the rhythmic work of weaving, a task that often fell to the women of the home, creating the very fabric of their lives. Just a few feet away, the discovery of a stylus and a small, wooden wax tablet, its surface once covered in a child's practice letters, hints at the quiet moments of education and discipline. The location of these objects within the house is as telling as the objects themselves. Finding fine, painted pottery in a formal dining room suggests occasions for social display, where a family might host guests to strengthen community ties. In stark contrast, the simple, soot-blackened cookpots clustered around a back hearth tell a different, more intimate story of the daily, repetitive labor of feeding a household. By carefully counting and mapping these finds, patterns of wealth and status become clear. A home with a high number of imported glass vessels or delicate jewelry tells of a family with far-reaching connections, while a dwelling with only a few coarseware pots suggests a life of modesty. Perhaps the most poignant discoveries are the smallest: miniature clay animals, a tiny carved top, or a little pottery jug, perfectly sized for a child's hand, are undeniable evidence of youthful presence. These were not grand treasures to their owners, but the ordinary stuff of existence. It is through this meticulous study of ancient trash that we recover the echoes of their most meaningful, mundane moments. Yet some of the most intimate family stories are found not in the homes of the living, but in the houses of the dead. Mortuary evidence offers a profound window into the bonds that tied families together, for the way a society treats its deceased speaks directly to its deepest values. A child laid to rest with a favorite toy, a small clay horse perhaps, is a heartbreaking testament to a parent's love that sought to comfort a child even in the afterlife. A matriarch interred with significant heirloom jewelry is not just a statement of her wealth, but a declaration of her enduring status and authority within the family lineage. This is where bioarchaeology gives voice to the silent. By studying the human remains themselves, scientists can now read the biological stories written in bone and tooth. DNA analysis can confirm kinship, linking a man and a woman buried side by side as husband and wife, or identifying a cluster of graves as multiple generations of the same family. The bones can reveal inherited traits, like a specific pattern of dental anomalies passed from parent to child, or show evidence of shared hardships, such as periods of malnutrition or disease that affected everyone in the household. The objects placed in a grave were never random. These grave goods were carefully chosen statements of identity and familial duty. A scribe buried with his stylus and palette, a warrior with his spear, a woman with her spindle whorls. Each item tells the living community, and perhaps the gods themselves, who this person was and the role their family held. The act of placing these items was a final, physical act of care, a duty performed by the living for the dead. By examining entire necropolises and family tombs, we see how kinship was memorialized across generations. A grand, above-ground tomb built to hold dozens of relatives demonstrates a powerful, continuous family identity that stretched across centuries. The careful placement of bodies, parents flanked by their children, or the poignant discovery of an infant cradled in its mother's arms, shows us that the family unit extended its protection and its love even beyond the boundary of death. This enduring care, etched in stone and bone, reveals a universal human impulse, a desire to keep our loved ones close forever. That final act of care in a tomb finds its echo in the most fundamental act of care within the home, the daily sharing of food. The true heart of the ancient house was the hearth, a place that pulsed with warmth, light, and life itself. It was far more than a simple fireplace. It was the symbolic and functional core of the family. Around its flames, people gathered for warmth, for light to work by, for the telling of stories, and for the simple, profound comfort of being together. This is where archaeologists uncover the intimate rhythms of daily life through the study of foodways, the entire social world of food, from how it was grown and butchered to how it was cooked and shared. The evidence is often subtle, a scatter of seeds and tiny bone fragments preserved in the ash and soil of a cooking area. These botanical and animal remains are like a forgotten grocery list, revealing the family's diet. The discovery of charred grains like wheat or barley tells of a staple crop, while the bones of sheep or goats show their source of meat, but the story goes deeper than the menu. The butchery marks on those bones are a form of ancient handwriting. Large chops from a heavy cleaver suggest a big joint of meat meant to feed a crowd, perhaps for a family festival or to honor an ancestor. Smaller, more precise cuts, on the other hand, point to meals prepared for a smaller, more immediate household. The very pots they used speak volumes. A thick, courseware jar, its bottom blackened from years over the fire, was a practical workhorse for slow-cooking stews and porridges. A fine, painted serving bowl, however, was kept for special occasions, a vessel for display when the family wanted to present its best self to guests. The act of sharing a meal from a common pot was a powerful social ritual. It reinforced hierarchy, with the head of the family often served first, and it solidified bonds, creating a shared experience that defined who belonged. Every step, from the grinding of grain at dawn to the passing of a shared cup at dusk, was a thread in the fabric that bound a family together, a daily rhythm of nourishment and connection that resonates across the millennia. The simple rhythm of a shared meal gives way to another sound, the unmistakable laughter of a child at play. The world of ancient children is often hidden in plain sight, revealed not through grand monuments, but through the miniature objects they left behind. A tiny terracotta rattle found in a Greek courtyard, its pebbles still faintly audible after thousands of years, is a direct line to a moment of play. An Egyptian wooden doll, its painted face worn smooth by small, loving hands, speaks of imagination and comfort. These were not mere trinkets, they were the tools of childhood itself. But the evidence extends far beyond toys. The discovery of small-sized leather sandals, perfectly preserved in the dry air of a desert home, tells us about the physical bodies that grew within those walls. A delicate ceramic feeding bottle, its spout designed for a baby's mouth, provides a silent, intimate connection to the most fundamental acts of parental care. We even find their early steps into the adult world preserved on broken pieces of pottery called ostraka, where a child's first, clumsy attempts at writing letters were practiced and then discarded. The location of these finds is profoundly revealing. Were a child's toys and tools scattered throughout the entire house, mixed with the looms and cookpots of their parents. This suggests a life fully integrated into the family's daily hustle. Or were they concentrated in a single, sheltered corner of a courtyard, perhaps a designated space where children could play under watchful eyes but away from the main work? This spatial analysis paints a picture of how a society viewed its youngest members, whether as constant companions in the flow of life or as occupants of a separate, protected world. The story of ancient childhood is also written in bone. Bioarchaeologists studying tiny skeletons can read the harsh realities these young lives faced. The chemical composition of teeth can reveal weaning practices, showing the age at which a baby transitioned from mother's milk to solid food, a dangerous period of dietary change. Skeletal evidence sheds stark light on tragically high infant mortality rates, a somber reminder of the fragility of life. Signs of nutritional stress or common childhood diseases etched into the bones tell us of the health challenges that were a constant part of growing up in the ancient world. By focusing on these small, often overlooked traces, we do more than just add detail to the past. We give a voice to the most vulnerable and often silent segment of ancient societies, restoring the laughter, the learning, and the love that surrounded a child long ago. That laughter of children would have been shaped by the invisible architecture of gender. The ancient home was a stage where the roles of men and women were performed daily, and archaeology uncovers the script by mapping where people worked and what they left behind. The distribution of artifacts paints a clear picture of a divided world. In one room, the small, clay spindle whorls used for spinning thread are almost always found. These humble objects, central to the vital work of textile production, are consistently linked to the female domain of the household. In another space, perhaps a courtyard or a separate workshop, you might find the heavy stone tools for sharpening metal or the residues of leatherworking, activities traditionally associated with men. This separation was often built directly into the walls. The concept of the gynoeceum in a Greek house was not just an idea, it was a physical reality. Its location, away from the street and the main reception areas, physically enforced a social ideal of female seclusion, controlling movement and interaction. Yet the story is never that simple. In the wealthy merchant houses of Mesopotamia, archaeologists have made a startling discovery: personal seals bearing the names of women. These were not mere jewelry, they were functional legal instruments, used to sign contracts and authorize business transactions. Finding them in a domestic context powerfully suggests that some women wielded significant economic authority, managing estates or commercial enterprises from within their own homes. This evidence complicates the picture, showing that the reality of women's lives could far exceed the narrow roles prescribed by law or literature. Beyond work and space, we can also explore the intimate expressions of gender identity. A delicate coal tube for eye makeup from Egypt, a finely carved bone hairpin from Rome, or a specific type of bracelet common to women in a particular culture, these were not just adornments. They were active statements. The choice of a certain cosmetic or jewelry style was a way of performing one's place in the world, of constructing a visible identity that aligned with, or perhaps even subtly challenged, societal expectations. By studying these personal items within the private sphere of the family, we move beyond the idealized views of official texts and begin to understand how gender was truly lived, a complex dance of rule and exception, constraint and expression, performed within the walls of every home. These personal expressions of identity were always framed by a stark economic reality. Every ancient family was first and foremost an economic unit, its survival dependent on its own ability to produce, consume, and sometimes trade. The household was a small, self-sufficient engine, and archaeology uncovers this vital economic bedrock through the scattered evidence of domestic industries. Walk through the ruins of any home, and you might find a cluster of heavy, tear-shaped loom weights in a corner. These simple clay discs, essential for tensioning the vertical threads on a loom, are more than just evidence of cloth making. They signal a home-based textile industry, often managed by the women of the household, that provided not only clothing for the family, but also a crucial source of supplementary income. Nearby, the discovery of a small dye vat or stores of raw wool or flax completes the picture of a cottage industry that turned raw materials into valuable goods. The economic story extends beyond the house walls. A worn iron plowshare leaning against a courtyard wall, or a set of stone grain grinders, speaks directly to the agricultural activities that fed the family. The types of seeds and animal bones found in storage pits tell us what they grew and raised, painting a detailed portrait of their subsistence strategy. But how did a family connect to the wider world? The answer can lie in a seemingly insignificant set of objects, standardized stone weights and bronze measures. Finding these in a home strongly suggests that the family was actively involved in local markets, weighing out their own produce or goods for fair exchange. This is how a household transitioned from mere self-sufficiency to becoming a node in a larger economic network. The goods they acquired tell the other side of this story. A shard of fine, glossy pottery from a distant region or a single glass bead that traveled thousands of miles are not just pretty objects, they are concrete proof of economic connections. The quality and origin of these imported goods act as a direct measure of a family's economic standing and their reach into the trade routes of the ancient world. By meticulously reconstructing this household economy from seeds, tools, and trade goods, we understand so much more than how a family fed itself. We see its ingenuity, its struggles, and its precise place within the vast, interconnected web of the ancient economy. A story of survival written not in grand pronouncements, but in the humble artifacts of daily labor. The economic engine of the household was powered by a network of people far beyond the modern nuclear family. Our contemporary idea of a tight mother-father-child unit is a recent development, a tiny fragment of the vast and intricate web that constituted ancient kinship. For most of history, family was a sprawling, fluid institution encompassing blood relations, marriage alliances, and even adopted or fictive kin, all bound by shared obligations and a collective identity. Archaeology peels back the layers of this complex social organism. Consider the physical space itself. The Roman Domus was not a private sanctuary for a couple and their children. It was a bustling residential compound designed to house multiple generations under one roof. Similarly, the Chinese Sihayuan, with its series of courtyards and connected buildings, was an architectural blueprint for an extended family, each wing accommodating a different branch within a structured hierarchy of respect and duty. These were not just homes, they were living monuments to lineage. The story of kinship continues into the cities of the dead. In a single necropolis, you can trace familial bonds across centuries. Tombs are not scattered randomly, they are carefully clustered with the grandest central burial belonging to a founding ancestor, surrounded by the graves of their descendants, arranged in a clear pattern that maps out generations of a single lineage. These burial plots were a permanent claim on the landscape, a stone and soil declaration of a family's enduring presence. Sometimes the past speaks with startling clarity through inscriptions. A funerary monument might list not just a husband and wife, but also their freed slaves who became part of the extended household, their clients, and even their distant cousins. A simple household item, like a storage jar, might bear a painted label naming the property of a large, multi-family clan. These were the social safety nets and the power structures of their time. Your identity, your security, and your future were inextricably linked to this expansive network. To be cut off from it was a form of social death. Recognizing this fluid, sprawling concept of family is the final key that unlocks a deeper understanding of the ancient world, revealing the powerful, invisible threads of obligation and belonging that tied each individual to a much larger whole. These sprawling family networks were anchored by a shared spiritual life. The divine was not a distant concept reserved for grand temples, but a constant, intimate presence within the walls of the home. Daily life was punctuated by small, personal rituals, a form of household worship that connected the family to the cosmos. In the corner of a Roman atrium, you might find a lararium, a small, beautifully painted shrine dedicated to the household gods, the lares. These were not just decorative niches, they were the spiritual heart of the home. Here, the paterfamilias would lead daily offerings, perhaps a few grains of incense, a piece of fruit, or a small libation of wine, poured out to honor these protective spirits and ensure the family's continued prosperity. Across the Mediterranean, in an Egyptian courtyard, archaeologists might uncover a small, terracotta figurine of the goddess Taweret, a formidable hippopotamus deity who was the fierce protector of mothers and children. Her presence in the home was a direct plea for safety during the perilous acts of childbirth and infancy. These finds are powerful because they are so personal. They speak to a family's private hopes and fears, their desire for divine favor in the most vulnerable aspects of their lives. The evidence for these rituals is often subtle but undeniable. A thin layer of carbonized residue in a small, ceremonial cup indicates an offering of wine. The tiny, charred bones of a dove or a chicken, found carefully placed before a household altar, show a more substantial sacrifice. We even find miniature vessels perfectly crafted but too small for practical use, which were likely symbolic gifts to the gods, representing the family's devotion. This daily practice of domestic religion did more than just seek protection. It reinforced family identity, binding everyone together in a shared cycle of reverence and duty. The act of gathering at the shrine, of performing the same gestures their ancestors had, created a profound sense of order and meaning. It connected the microcosm of the home, with its daily struggles and joys, to the macrocosm of a universe governed by divine will. The artifacts of this intimate faith show us that spirituality was not a separate part of life, but a thread woven directly into the fabric of every meal, every birth, and every night spent safely within the shelter of the family walls. The spiritual comfort of the household gods could not erase the hard lines of social class. A family's position in the rigid hierarchy of the ancient world fundamentally shaped every aspect of their daily existence, a truth starkly illustrated by the bones of their homes and the artifacts they left behind. Consider the sheer physical space they inhabited. Walk through the ruins of a Roman elite's country villa. Your feet would tread on intricate mosaic floors depicting mythical scenes, and you might find the remains of a private bath complex with underfloor heating. This was a world of leisure and display designed for hosting powerful guests and showcasing immense wealth. Now take a literal step into the world of the urban poor, into a Roman insula. These multi-story apartment blocks were overcrowded and dangerously constructed. A single family might be crammed into one small, dark room with the constant threat of fire and collapse hanging over them. The difference in their material possessions tells the same story of disparity. In the villa, you would find fine, thin-walled pottery imported from across the Mediterranean, delicate glass vessels, and jewelry of gold and semi-precious stones. The trash pits of such a home reveal a varied diet rich in meat, fish, and exotic spices. Just a few streets away, in the insula, the archaeological picture changes completely. The pottery is coarse, thick, and locally made, designed for durability, not beauty. The animal bones found there tell of a diet heavily reliant on cheap grains, lentils, and the occasional scrap of meat. This class divide was replicated even within a single, wealthy household. The artifacts associated with the family who owned the villa are one set of evidence, but what of the enslaved individuals who made that life possible? Their reality is often found in the most humble of objects, a simple wooden bowl, a plain ceramic lamp, or the minimal possessions found in a small back room or separate quarters. Their diet, discerned from the remains of their meals, was consistently poorer in quality and variety than that of the family they served. By comparing these domestic assemblages, these collections of everyday life across the entire social spectrum, we move beyond abstract ideas of rich and poor. We see with concrete clarity how social class dictated the very air one breathed, the food one ate, and the space in which one lived, loved, and dreamed. The stark divide of social class was etched not just in possessions, but into the very bodies of ancient families. Their physical well-being is a story written in bone and tooth, a narrative that bioarchaeologists are now learning to read. By studying human remains, we uncover a lifetime of hardship and resilience. The lines of arrested growth visible on a child's femur tell a heartbreaking tale of seasonal famine or chronic illness, a period when their body simply stopped growing to conserve energy. The worn-down teeth of an adult, ground flat from a lifelong diet of coarse, stone-ground bread mixed with grit from the millstone, speak to the daily toll of their food. A skeleton can reveal a history of labor, with enlarged muscle attachments on the shoulders from years of heavy lifting, or a spine curved by a lifetime spent at a loom. Even healed injuries, a broken arm that set crookedly, tell us about the quality of care and the constant physical risks of ancient life. Their approach to healthcare is revealed through the objects they left behind. In the ruins of a home, archaeologists might find a small cache of medicinal herbs like poppy seeds for pain or willow bark, a natural source of the aspirin we use today. A finely crafted bronze scalpel or a set of surgical probes, carefully stored in a wooden box, indicates a level of medical knowledge and the presence of a skilled practitioner, perhaps even a family member trained in treating wounds. And sometimes the most poignant evidence comes in the form of faith. A small terracotta votive offering shaped like a leg or an ear, left at a shrine, was a direct plea to the gods for healing, a desperate attempt to mend a loved one's affliction through divine intervention. This daily struggle for health was profoundly shaped by the architecture of hygiene. The quality of a family's life was directly linked to their access to clean water and waste removal. In a wealthy Roman city, an aqueduct channeling fresh water directly into a home's private fountain was a marvel of engineering that drastically reduced waterborne diseases. That same house would have featured a latrine, often positioned over a flowing channel of water that carried waste away. For the vast majority of people, however, the reality was far different. A shared well in the center of a village, susceptible to contamination from nearby latrines or animal pens, was a constant source of danger. the discovery of parasite eggs in ancient latrine sediments provides grim, direct evidence of the intestinal diseases that plagued entire communities. The presence or absence of simple drainage channels in a street designed to carry away rainwater and sewage could mean the difference between a healthy household and one constantly battling illness. From the grand scale of an aqueduct to the intimate space of a sick room, these fragments of evidence paint a vivid, sobering picture of the daily challenges ancient families faced. They remind us that their greatest battle was often not for wealth or power, but for the simple, profound gift of a healthy tomorrow. That daily battle for health unfolded within a complex emotional world. While we can map a house and inventory its tools, the true challenge lies in uncovering the human heartbeats that once filled its rooms. How do we find evidence of love or tension or conflict? The clues are often subtle, written in the margins of history. A piece of graffiti scratched onto a plaster wall in Pompeii is not just vandalism, it is a raw, unedited voice. One inscription might be a simple declaration, "Marcus loves Secunda," a fleeting moment of affection preserved for centuries. Another might record a personal insult or a petty grievance between neighbors, revealing the friction that was part of community life. These spontaneous marks are the ancient equivalent of a whispered secret or a heated argument, echoing through time. The formal structures of relationships are laid bare in legal documents. A marriage contract on a clay tablet from Mesopotamia does more than just join two people. It meticulously outlines the economic and social obligations of each family, revealing the practical foundations upon which emotional life was built. Conversely, a divorce settlement on papyrus from Egypt can detail the division of property and the custody of children, pointing directly to the potential fractures and formal endings that families could face. These texts give us the rules of the game, the official framework within which personal dramas played out. Even broken objects tell a story. The deliberate shattering of a pottery vessel in a specific corner of a home might not always be an accident. In some cultures, the ritual breakage of objects was a way to symbolically resolve a conflict or to mark the end of a dispute, a physical release of domestic tension. The final resting place offers perhaps the most poignant evidence. The careful, tender arrangement of a mother and child in a shared grave speaks of a bond that death could not break. Yet the discovery of a family member buried separately, away from the ancestral tomb, might hint at estrangement, disgrace, or a personal story of separation that is now lost to us. By learning to read these indirect clues, we do more than just reconstruct ancient social structures. We begin to hear the faint but unmistakable echoes of laughter, the whispers of arguments, and the profound silences of heartbreak, reminding us that the emotional landscape of the family is the most human and enduring artifact of all. These echoes of the human heart reveal a world far from static. Ancient families were constantly in motion, their homes reshaped by the great currents of migration. People moved for countless reasons, driven by the search for new trade routes, displaced by the upheaval of warfare, or pushed by the slow creep of environmental change. When they arrived in a new land, they brought their entire world with them in the form of customs, languages, and household goods. Archaeology uncovers these intimate journeys of blending and adaptation, often through a single, telling object discovered in the corner of a home. A piece of foreign pottery, its shape and glaze unlike anything made locally, is more than just an import. It is a physical piece of someone's homeland. A style of necklace or a carved amulet common in a distant region but found in a local grave tells a powerful story of intermarriage, of a person who was welcomed into a new family and community, bringing their traditions with them. The science of bioarchaeology now allows us to read these life stories directly from the skeleton. isotopic analysis of tooth enamel acts as a chemical passport. The minerals and elements absorbed from food and water during childhood become locked into our developing teeth, creating a unique signature of the geological landscape where we grew up. When scientists analyze the teeth of an individual buried in a community for generations, a startling story can emerge. The chemical signature might reveal that this person was born hundreds of miles away. They spent their childhood in a different valley, drank from a different river, and ate food grown in different soil. Their skeleton had made a long journey to become part of this new family, their origins invisible until now. This evidence transforms our understanding of the ancient household. A family was not always a closed biological unit, but could be a dynamic blend of local and foreign, of native-born and adopted members. This blending of cultures created a fascinating duality within the home. A family's material culture became a palimpsest, a manuscript where the original text of their heritage was still visible beneath new layers of adaptation. In one corner of a house in Roman Britain, you might find the traditional Celtic way of cooking, using coarse, hand-made pots placed directly in the hearth. Just a few feet away, sitting on a shelf, could be a fine, red Samian-ware bowl imported from Gaul, used for serving food in the new Roman style. This was not a simple replacement of one culture by another. It was a careful negotiation. A family might maintain the spiritual practices of their ancestors, using a small, foreign-style figurine for private worship, while their children adopted the local language and dress outside the home. The very objects they chose to keep and those they chose to acquire were active statements about their identity. They were deciding which parts of their past to preserve and which new customs to embrace. This continuous flow of people and ideas fundamentally challenges the modern notion of the isolated, self-contained family unit. An ancient home was not a sealed box, but a vibrant node in a vast, interconnected network of human movement. Every foreign artifact, every chemical signature in a tooth, every adopted custom whispers the same truth, that families have always been fluid, resilient, and open to the world. Their strength lay not in purity, but in their incredible capacity to absorb new influences, to welcome newcomers, and to weave distant threads into the enduring fabric of their own story. Every house has a life story, a biography written in its walls. We can trace this narrative from the moment of its creation, when the foundation stones were first laid into the earth. The choice of materials alone speaks volumes about the family who built it. A foundation of rough, unshaped fieldstones suggests a household of modest means, using what was readily available. In contrast, a foundation of finely cut ashlar blocks, carefully fitted without mortar, proclaims a family with significant wealth and social ambition, investing in a home meant to last for generations. This initial construction was more than just building. It was a statement of identity and hope. Before those first walls even rose, families often sealed their dreams for the future within the very bones of the house. Archaeologists sometimes discover ritual deposits placed beneath thresholds or within foundation trenches. A small, carefully positioned offering, perhaps a coin, a perfect animal bone, or a tiny ceramic figurine, was a spiritual plea for protection and prosperity, a blessing physically embedded into the home's structure. As the years turned into decades, the house itself evolved, its walls recording the family's changing story. A new room added onto the side of a once small dwelling tells a tale of growth, perhaps to accommodate an elderly parent or a newly married child. The sudden partition of a large room into two smaller, cramped spaces might signal a family's declining fortune, forcing them to take in tenants or split their living area. We can even read the rhythms of daily maintenance in the layers of a floor. The accumulation of thin, compacted surfaces, one plaster floor laid atop another, reveals a cycle of renewal. Each new layer was a fresh start, a small investment in preserving the family's center. The evidence of repairs, a patch of differently colored plaster or a section of wall rebuilt with mismatched stones, shows a family's determination to mend what was broken, to keep their world intact against the wear of time and the elements. The final chapter of a home's life is often the most poignant, a silent testament to its last days. The mode of abandonment leaves a clear archaeological signature. A home that was carefully emptied presents a neat, almost sterile scene. The hearths are cold and swept clean, the storage pits are empty, and only broken, worthless items remain. This suggests an orderly, planned departure, a family who packed their lives into carts and moved on, taking their memories with them. But then there are the houses frozen in a moment of crisis. At sites like Pompeii or in settlements destroyed by sudden conflict, the story is starkly different. Valuables are left behind, a collection of coins scattered on a floor as if dropped in a rush. Cooking pots still sit in the hearth, containing the carbonized remains of a final, uneaten meal. This is a home interrupted, its daily life violently suspended, offering a heartbreakingly intimate snapshot of a family's last moments together. By reading this entire life cycle, from the blessing in the foundation to the hurried flight, we come to a profound realization. The home was never a passive container. It was a living, breathing partner in the family's saga, its walls growing and changing right alongside the people it sheltered, a steadfast witness to every beginning, every struggle, and every end. That final, hurried meal left uneaten in a hearth speaks of a life interrupted, but what of the quieter moments of growth and learning within those same walls? For countless children in the ancient world, the home was their first and only schoolroom. The evidence for this domestic education is subtle yet deeply personal, etched not on monuments but on the most humble of materials. A wooden wax tablet, its surface scarred with the careful, then clumsy, strokes of a child learning the alphabet, tells a story of patience and instruction. A broken piece of pottery, an ostracon, becomes a priceless slate when we find it covered in rows of practiced letters or simple arithmetic problems. These were the workbooks of the ancient child, tools for mastering the powerful, elusive skill of literacy. The very presence of writing equipment in a home paints a picture of its intellectual life. A bronze stylus, its point worn down from hours of use, or a small ceramic inkwell that once held a precious supply of black ink, are clear markers of a literate household. In wealthier residences, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of small, private libraries, collections of scrolls that contained everything from epic poetry to manuals on agriculture. But for most families, literacy was a fiercely practical tool. It was not about reading philosophy for pleasure, but about calculating the harvest, recording debts, or drafting a contract for the family business. A father might teach his son to write so he could manage the estate accounts, or a merchant might ensure his children could read shipping manifests. A miniature wooden abacus, found nestled beside a stack of tablets, shows how children learned the essential art of counting and commerce through hands-on play. Yet this doorway to knowledge was not open to everyone. Access to education was a stark reflection of the ancient world's social hierarchies. In a spacious Roman villa, a boy from a privileged family might have a dedicated Greek tutor, a pedagogue, who guided him through Homer and geometry within the comfort of his own home. For his sister, however, the lessons were often different, focused on managing a household rather than engaging in rhetoric. Her education was likely domestic and artistic, perhaps learning to weave intricate patterns whose symbolism was a language in itself. For the vast majority of children, especially those from poor families or those born into slavery, formal learning was an impossible luxury. Their classroom was the workshop or the field, and their lessons were the manual skills needed for survival. The scattered wax tablets and Inkai fingerprints of long-vanished children are therefore more than just artifacts. They are fragile signatures of privilege and aspiration, silent proof that the hunger for knowledge and the power that comes with it found a home within the family long before the first school bell ever rang. The scratch of a reed pen on a wax tablet was only one sound in a symphony of daily life. To cross the threshold of an ancient home is to enter a world alive with noise, scent, and texture. Sensory archaeology now attempts to reconstruct this full-bodied experience, moving beyond the silent objects to the vibrant reality they once inhabited. Close your eyes and listen. The pre-dawn hour would have been filled with the relentless, grating rhythm of grain being ground on a heavy stone quern, a task that fell to the women of the household and marked the start of the day. This was the soundtrack of survival. From another room came the soft, regular clatter of clay loom weights as a shuttle was passed through vertical threads, weaving the family's very clothing. The air itself was a complex tapestry of smells. The sharp, familiar scent of wood smoke from the hearth was a constant, layered with the rich aroma of simmering stew or the pungent odor of fish sauce fermenting in a clay jar. Outside, the air might carry the distinct, unpleasant tang from a nearby tannery or the earthy smell of animals kept in a courtyard. Every surface told a story to the touch. A worn, woven reed mat felt rough under bare feet. A smooth, polished clay cup was cool in the hand, and the rough-hewn wood of a storage chest was a texture known intimately from daily use. We can even recover their pursuit of pleasure and comfort. A small, decorated incense burner found in a corner still bears the carbonized residue of fragrant resins, evidence of an attempt to sweeten the air with myrrh or frankincense. A simple bone flute with its finger holes carefully drilled speaks of music and melody, of someone filling the evening with song. Small glass bottles that once held perfumed oils, their traces identifiable by chemical analysis, show a desire for personal adornment and scent beyond the utilitarian. By engaging all our senses, these silent stones and broken artifacts begin to pulse with life. We no longer just see the hearth, we feel its warmth and smell its smoke. We do not just inventory a loom weight, we hear its rhythmic click-clack. This multisensory approach does more than add detail. It bridges the vast distance of time, allowing us to feel, for just a moment, the profound and familiar humanity of a world long gone. That final, tender act of placing a bone flute beside a loved one finds a parallel in the care shown to another kind of family member. A small, carefully dug grave holds the skeleton of a dog, its neck still encircled by a worn leather collar. This is not a discarded animal, but a companion laid to rest with clear affection. The ancient bond between humans and animals is written in these poignant burials, revealing a depth of emotion that transcends mere utility. A cat found curled eternally beside a child in an Egyptian tomb, or a hunting dog interred with its master in a Celtic chieftain's grave, speaks a universal language of love and loss. These were not random acts, but deliberate inclusions that honored a shared life. Yet the role of animals within the household was complex and multifaceted. The same archaeological site that yields a pet's grave will also contain piles of butchered bones from sheep, goats, and pigs. The cut marks on these bones, analyzed by specialists, tell a starkly different story, one of sustenance and survival. They reveal which species were raised primarily for food and how they were processed from a large feast to daily meals. Beyond companionship and food, animals were vital partners in labor. The skeleton of a donkey, excavated from a stable attached to a home, can bear witness to a lifetime of work. Stress marks on its leg bones and vertebrae, a condition known as spavin, tell of years spent carrying heavy loads or turning a millstone, its body worn down in service to the family's economic need. An ox buried with a ceremonial yoke might have been a prized asset, essential for plowing the fields that fed the entire household. This integration of animals into the emotional and economic fabric of life is further illustrated by the art that adorned the home. A Roman mosaic might playfully depict a small, leashed dog, its name perhaps inscribed beside it. A wall painting in a wealthy villa could show a graceful cat stalking birds in a garden, a testament to its role as both pet and pest controller. In these domestic scenes, animals are not wild beasts, but familiar presences, their personalities and purposes captured for eternity. From the loyal guard dog to the cherished hunting falcon, these non-human members contributed to the family's spirit and its survival, their bones and images reminding us that the ancient hearth was a place shared by many different kinds of hearts. The worn ivory dice scattered beside a courtyard bench are more than forgotten trinkets. They are invitations to a game, silent echoes of laughter and friendly rivalry that once cut through the daily grind. Life in the ancient world demanded relentless work, but within the home's walls, families fiercely carved out time for play. These moments of leisure were not frivolous. They were essential acts of bonding and mental respite, and they left behind a distinct and telling trail of artifacts. Perhaps the most intimate of these are board games. In an Egyptian home, a family might have gathered on the floor to play Senet, a game of strategy and chance believed to mirror the soul's journey through the afterlife. A complete set with its carved pawns and throw sticks, found tucked away in a room, speaks of a household that valued strategy, storytelling, and time spent together in concentrated play. Similarly, in a Roman villa, the strategic war game Ludus Latrincularum, played with polished glass or stone pieces on a grid, offered a different kind of mental exercise, a domestic simulation of military command that could bond father and son or become a fiercely competitive pastime among friends. Then there were the pure games of chance, a collection of sheep knucklebones polished smooth from countless throws, or carefully carved dice made from bone or ivory, tell us that the thrill of a lucky roll is an ancient human joy. These simple objects hint at impromptu games played on the steps of a shop, or quiet wagers between siblings in the shade of a courtyard. But leisure was not only about competition. The discovery of musical instruments transforms our image of the ancient home from a silent ruin to a place filled with melody. A simple terracotta rattle, its pebbles still faintly audible, might have soothed a baby or kept rhythm for a child's dance. A more complex instrument, like a tortoise-shell lyre with its delicate wooden frame, suggests a family with the means and the inclination for music-making. The presence of such an object implies someone practiced, someone who spent hours creating beauty for their family's enjoyment. This soundscape of plucked strings and rhythmic shaking would have provided a shared emotional experience, a background score to evenings of storytelling or celebration. The very architecture of the home was designed to facilitate these lighter moments. A central courtyard with its open sky and perhaps a small fountain was not just a practical light well. It was an outdoor living room, a versatile space for children's games, for adults to recline on couches and converse, or for the family to share a meal under the stars. A garden, even a small one, offered a touch of nature and tranquility, a place to escape the cramped indoor rooms. These were the stages for relaxation and social bonding. By seeking out these artifacts of joy, we reclaim a vital dimension of ancient life. We see that the family was not just an economic unit for survival, but a sanctuary for laughter, for creative expression, and for the simple, profound pleasure of being together without a single chore to be done. The joyful clutter of a child's toy in Rome finds a perfect echo along the Nile. Ancient Egypt provides a uniquely vivid window into domestic life, a civilization where the family unit was the bedrock of society and the very path to immortality. The dry, desert air acted as a natural preservative, saving not just the grand monuments of pharaohs, but the intimate possessions of ordinary people. In the ruins of a mud-brick home, you might find a wooden doll with real hair, its paint still faintly visible, or a set of miniature furniture for a child to play with. These are not just artifacts, they are personal treasures rescued from time. Even more remarkably, we have their own words. Letters written on papyrus between a husband away on business and his wife managing the household discuss everything from the harvest to the misbehavior of their sons, revealing the same mundane worries and deep affections that fill our own lives today. The design of their homes reinforced this communal existence. Built from sun-dried mud brick, these structures were often organized around a central courtyard. This was the true heart of the Egyptian home, a multi-purpose space for grinding grain, weaving linen, cooking meals, and socializing. The architecture funneled daily life into a shared, open area, ensuring the family was constantly interacting, their lives woven together in the bright Egyptian sun. But perhaps the most powerful expressions of family values come from the tombs, the houses of eternity. The walls are covered in idealized scenes of domestic bliss. A man and his wife are shown seated close together, often embracing, their poses speaking of companionship and love. Their children are depicted playing games or assisting their parents, a clear representation of a multi-generational household working in harmony. These images were not just decorative, they were magical guarantees intended to manifest this perfect family unit for all of eternity. This profound belief in an afterlife spent together fueled an incredible investment in tomb construction and decoration. A family would pool their resources for generations to ensure their eternal home was properly equipped, believing that their spirits could only survive if their names were remembered and their images preserved. This created a powerful cycle of continuity, where honoring your ancestors was directly linked to securing your own future. The Egyptian emphasis on stability, affection, and lineage across countless generations offers a striking point of comparison. While a Roman father's authority was absolute in law, an Egyptian tomb scene shows a husband and wife as partners in both life and death. The archaeological record here is so rich and so deeply personal that it allows us to see past the idealization. We can sense the genuine emotion behind the formal art, the real love that motivated a family to ensure they would never truly be parted. The Roman Familia was a small empire in itself, ruled by the absolute authority of the paterfamilias. His power, the patria potestas, legally extended to every soul under his roof, granting him control over his children, his wife, and the enslaved individuals whose labor sustained the household's economy. This was a world where a father could disinherit a son or sell a daughter into marriage to secure a political alliance. Yet, to see this structure as merely a rigid dictatorship is to miss its intricate reality. The Roman home was a stage for a constant, subtle negotiation between this overwhelming authority and the quiet agency of everyone else within its walls. The archaeological treasures of Pompeii and Herculaneum, frozen in a single tragic moment, let us witness this delicate balance firsthand. Stepping into a domus, you are immediately confronted by its dual nature. The grand, open atrium was a public theater. Here, the paterfamilias would receive his clients each morning, dispensing favors and solidifying his social standing in full view of the community. The floor was often decorated with a beautiful mosaic warning visitors, cave canem, beware of the dog. This was a space designed for display and social performance. But step beyond this public face through a corridor and you enter the true private world of the family. The cubicula or small bedrooms were not luxurious sanctuaries. They were modest, often windowless rooms, offering a retreat from the public gaze and sheltering the most intimate bonds of kinship. It is in these private spaces, and scrawled on the very walls that separated public from private, that we find the true voices of the family. The graffiti of Pompeii is a breathtakingly direct line to its people. These are not the words of emperors or senators, but the casual thoughts of ordinary individuals. One scrawl on a wall might be a simple shopping list for bread and oil, dictated by the matron of the house to an enslaved scribe. Another is a passionate declaration of love for a girl named Iris. Yet another is a crude political endorsement, showing that even within a patriarchal structure, personal opinions were fiercely held and publicly shared. This vibrant, unsanctioned writing gives voice to the thoughts of the very people the paterfamilias was supposed to completely control. The spiritual life of the home further reveals this complex web of duty and devotion. In the corner of the atrium, you would almost always find the lararium, a small, beautifully painted shrine. This was the sacred heart of the household, dedicated to the lares, the protective spirits of the family and its ancestors. Each day, the paterfamilias would lead offerings here, a ritual that honored the past and sought divine favor for the future. This act was a profound reinforcement of his role as the family's priest, linking his authority to the divine. But the shrine also belonged to everyone. The enslaved members of the household would also pray here, offering their own hopes to the same gods, seeking protection in a life where they had little. The lararium was a powerful symbol of unity, a spiritual anchor that tied the entire, sprawling familia together, regardless of an individual's status. By reading the architecture, the graffiti, and the shrines together, a nuanced picture emerges. We see a world where the paterfamilias held immense power, but where his wife managed the complex domestic economy. His children carved their names into the plaster, and the enslaved individuals left their own marks on history. The Roman family was not a monolith. It was a dynamic, often contradictory community of individuals living under one roof, bound by law, ritual, and the shared experience of daily life. The standardized brick houses of the Indus Valley tell a story of community before kings. In the sprawling, meticulously planned cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, you will not find the grand palaces of pharaohs or the lavish villas of Roman senators. Instead, you find a remarkable consistency, block after block of well-built homes with sturdy walls and a surprising modern convenience, private bathrooms. This was not a civilization that built monuments to glorify a single ruler. Its greatest architectural achievement was a complex, city-wide drainage system, a network of covered channels that ran beneath the streets, carrying waste away from every single household. This collective investment in public health and sanitation speaks of a society that valued the well-being of the entire community, suggesting a social structure that may have been far more egalitarian than its contemporaries. What was life like inside one of these uniform brick houses? The evidence points to a world centered on the domestic sphere. Each home was a self-contained universe, often built around a central courtyard that provided light and air. The presence of a private courtyard and a dedicated bathroom points to a culture that cherished family privacy, even within a densely packed urban center. The artifacts they left behind are not declarations of imperial power, but the quiet traces of daily living. Small, hand-formed terracotta figurines of women and animals, perhaps used in household rituals or as children's toys, are found scattered throughout the ruins. Carts with solid wooden wheels pulled by bullocks rumbled through the wide streets, bringing goods to the city's great central granary and bustling dockyards. The most tantalizing clues are the thousands of small, square seals, carved from steatite and decorated with images of mythical beasts and a script that remains undeciphered to this day. These were likely used by merchants to mark their goods, hinting at a society where economic power was distributed among many families, not concentrated in a royal court. Without grand temples or colossal statues of gods, scholars speculate that spiritual life may have been deeply personal, practiced within the home or in small community shrines. The family itself, therefore, may have been the primary institution, the fundamental pillar upon which this entire, brilliantly organized and profoundly mysterious civilization was built. The silent, unyielding demands of the local environment shaped every family's world. A home in ancient Egypt was fundamentally a response to the Nile. Its predictable yet overwhelming annual flood dictated the rhythm of existence, creating a calendar of labor that bound the family together. When the river receded, leaving behind fertile black silt, every able hand, from the eldest grandfather to the youngest child, would be mobilized for the intense cooperative work of planting. The family unit was an agricultural team, its survival hinging on this collective effort. Far to the north, in the cold climates of Europe, the environment imposed a different kind of intimacy. Here, the central hearth was not a symbol of comfort, but a tool for survival. The home was built small and tightly insulated, often a single large room where the entire family, and sometimes even their livestock, gathered around the life-giving fire. This constant need for warmth created a world of physical closeness that is almost unimaginable today. Archaeology reads this environmental story in the trash heaps of history. Along a rocky coastline, you might find a massive midden, a mound composed almost entirely of discarded oyster and mussel shells, accumulated over generations. This tells a clear story of a family whose diet and economy were pulled from the sea. In the heart of a desert settlement, the story is written in clever adaptation. The remains of sophisticated cisterns and intricate systems of channels designed to capture every precious drop of rainwater speak of a society that had to master water management to simply exist. These were not grand public works ordered by a king, but family-level and community-wide innovations born of sheer necessity. This deep connection to place even shaped their social world. A family living in a resource-rich river valley might develop a more settled hierarchical structure with inherited rights to prime farmland. In contrast, a family in a harsher, more unpredictable landscape might need to remain flexible and mobile, their social bonds reinforced by shared journeys and the constant negotiation for scarce resources. When we find evidence of ancient climate change in the geological record, like a long period of drought, we can then look at the family dwellings from that time. Did they shrink? Were new storage technologies invented? Was there a shift in the types of food they ate, moving to more drought-resistant grains? These are the material fingerprints of resilience. Every choice, from the clay used to make their pots to the layout of their villages, was a dialogue with the natural world. Their homes were not just shelters from the elements, they were brilliant, evolving adaptations to them. The rigid authority of a Roman paterfamilias did not vanish with the empire. His legal power over the household, the concept of patria potestas, became deeply embedded in the foundations of European property law for more than 1,000 years. This ancient framework, where the male head of the household controlled all family assets, directly shaped inheritance traditions that passed wealth and land down a single, legitimate line. prioritizing the preservation of a family name over individual choice. That powerful impulse to trace one's lineage, to find a connection to a distant ancestor, is another echo from the ancient world. Our modern fascination with genealogy mirrors the profound importance cultures like Egypt and Rome placed on ancestry, where a person's identity and social standing were inseparable from their family tree. Even the physical space we idealize, the single-family home with its private rooms and fenced yard, is a direct descendant of architectural models that prioritize the nuclear family unit. By uncovering the archaeological roots of these structures, we are handed a powerful mirror. We can look at our own social norms regarding family, property, and privacy, and ask a profound question. Which of these feel like timeless, universal human responses, and which are specific cultural constructs, inherited ideas passed down like heirlooms from a world long gone? This connection does not just tell us about them, it helps us understand the very architecture of our own lives, revealing how the choices made by families thousands of years ago still whisper in the walls of our homes and the laws of our lands today. The timeless echoes of laughter and shared meals from ancient homes remind us of a powerful truth. Our journey through these long, silent houses reveals that while empires crumble and technologies transform, the fundamental rhythm of family life endures. We have seen the same impulse to nurture a child in the tiny sandal left by a Roman doorway and in the protective amulet placed in an Egyptian cradle. We recognize the universal need for connection in the soot-blackened cookpots clustered around a central hearth and in the worn dice scattered where a family once played a game. These are not the stories of kings and conquerors recorded on grand monuments. They are the intimate, everyday narratives of people navigating the universal challenges and joys of kinship, people whose hopes and struggles feel remarkably familiar across the chasm of centuries. From the legal tablets outlining a Roman father's duties to the poignant graffiti declaring a secret love in Pompeii, the evidence shows us individuals, not just artifacts. They were people making a home, raising their children, and finding moments of comfort and joy amidst the daily grind of survival. This exploration fundamentally reshapes our understanding of history. It tells us that the true bedrock of human experience is not found on the battlefield, but within the walls of the home, in the quiet, cumulative acts of care that bind generations together. So the next time you sit down for a family meal or hear the sound of children playing, try looking at your own world with an archaeologist's eye. Consider the layers of history embedded in your own routines and relationships. Which ancient family story spoke to you the most? Was it the child learning to write on a wax tablet, the parent placing a toy in a grave, or the merchant's wife managing the estate? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation across time.